I am a swamp cartographer. And what I mean by that is I study the geography of wetlands, those low-lying areas that are covered by shallow water and wet soils, also known as mud, for some or all of the year. And I do this because these areas are the largest natural source of the greenhouse gas methane. And unlike the other human sources, we don't have a lot of control over the natural emissions, so they're very hard to predict. And globally, we don't have a very detailed picture of where exactly these wetlands lie and exactly how much area they take up. So my research is motivated by a simple principle. We can't count how much of something there is if we don't know where it is. So this is a peatland pond in Alberta, Canada, that I visited in 2018 with my lab. That's me, the inflatable raft, taking water samples. My group is part of a decade-long NASA project to look at the changing Arctic. And so every summer, a suite of research aircraft fly the same path over Arctic Canada and Alaska, carrying on board sophisticated imaging technology like cameras, spectrometers, and radars. Whenever we're in the field, we try to have a team on the ground underneath to take what is known as ground truth measurements, the measurements that can only be taken in situ rather than from the air. And because we're trying to measure the coverage of lakes and wetlands, for us this involves donning our chest waders and walking along the shorelines of these water bodies, one boot in the water, one boot on land, and a handheld GPS in our wader pockets. Back in the lab, it's my job to disentangle all these meandering GPS tracks and field observations and drone photos like the image I just showed to make what are known as training data sets, which I then use to put into machine learning models that I run on the airborne imagery so that we can predict coverage of lakes and wetlands, even in areas we haven't yet visited. Carbon scientists are interested in the gas methane because it has a global warming impact 25 times as great as its better-known cousin, carbon dioxide, although it's only present in the atmosphere in smaller concentrations. In the Arctic, the fate of methane is closely intertwined with that of permafrost, which is frozen ground that remains frozen throughout the year, even throughout the summer, because it lies so far north. And as you know, the permafrost is thawing, and it's exposing carbon-containing sediments that have been buried in ice for tens of thousands of years since the last ice age. And all these sediments are fast becoming bacteria food, and the metabolic byprocess of this decomposition is the greenhouse gas methane. And this process is known as the permafrost carbon feedback. The hotter it gets, the more greenhouse gases are released, and therefore, the hotter it gets. So you have lakes like this one. This sits on thawing permafrost in Alaska, and it was photographed by a scientist at the University of Alaska in 2007, which probably explains the grainy footage taken from a flip phone, most likely. And what this is showing is that the conditions for methane production are so excellent underneath this lake that it's literally bubbling to the surface like methane kombucha. So the job of the swamp cartographer here is to try and figure out where the other lakes like this are. Where are the high sources of methane emission? And let me tell you, they're not all this obvious. The field of limnology, which seeks to study freshwater science, has traditionally been focused on the world's largest lakes, the ones that are most important for fishing and commerce and transportation. And these are the 40 largest ones drawn to scale. The peatland pond I showed earlier would hardly be a pinprick on this map. Yet it's actually the smallest lakes that are the greatest source of methane on a per area basis. And these are the ones that are the hardest to image from satellites. It wasn't until recently that we could even resolve lakes smaller than about the size of a football field. And by my estimate, there's about 300 million of these lakes in the world. So the challenge, my process for solving this challenge, is using modern high-resolution imagery from both satellite and airborne sources to get very accurate maps of the exact extents of lakes and wetlands. I'll leave you with this mosaic of lakes that I visited that summer in Alberta. Many of them are below this football field limit and thus wouldn't have been observable from the satellites that can see our most remote areas of the Earth. Each one of them has its own environmental history in its sediments and waters below. Modern climate models can not only resolve the projected human emissions of greenhouse gases, but also natural emissions such as methane from aquatic systems like these. So I hope that my research is important because I help inform the wetland maps that work for these models that are our best estimate of how climate change will play out in the coming decades.